There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, the delight.
1, 2, 3, set, go.
Hello and welcome to the Power Chord Hour podcast. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant. And if you did not check out last week's episode, I was talking with my buddy Zach Gorzheski about our top 5 favorite drive-thru releases. And I mean, that bad boy, we talked for about 3 hours on Drive Thru Records, something that we probably could have talked about for another 3. Easily could have done a 6-hour episode. I don't think anyone wants to hear us talk for 6 hours. But anyway, tonight is the second half of that discussion with Zach. But just want to let you know real quick, if you have not checked out last week's episode, you might want to go back and listen to that first, because this is the second part of it, so it will probably make more sense if you go back and listen to that. If you've already listened to it, thanks for listening to that episode, and we got the rest for you right now. So I will not bore you anymore. Let's get back into our discussion of top 5 favorite drive-thru record releases with me and my buddy Zach Gorzheski right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. Getting back to our favorite releases, my second favorite release, and a classic, I think extremely underrated. You mentioned him earlier as one of my favorites, but the Benjamins with The Art of Disappointment. I mean, this to me, we talk about underrated drive-thru albums. This is it to me. In my opinion, this is the most underrated drive-thru release that they ever put out. This record, the band kind of they didn't fuck themselves over, but being on Drive Thru, I think, was a gift and a curse for them, because I love them, and I think one of the things I like about the Benjamins is I thought that they could go play with, like, say, New Found Glory, but then could also go play with, like, a band like Super Drag or Nada Surf, kind of more like an alt-rock band or an indie band, because they were probably more of a power pop band, more than anything. Like, I'm buddies with a couple of the guys, the bass player Benny. I've hung out with him a little bit. He's a good dude, my buddy. And Johnny, their drummer, I've talked to online throughout the years, and he's a really good dude as well. I mean, both very good dudes. But spending time with Ben and kind of talking to him about the band and knowing what music he listens to, they were never like, if you talk to that guy, there's other guys in drive-thru bands where I feel like they were into what Drive Thru was doing. And, you might talk to like when I was talking to Joe of Hidden in Plain View, like, I mean, there were probably other drive-thru bands that he was into. Whereas when I kind of talked to like Ben and stuff from the Benjamins, not that he didn't like drive-thru bands, but it's like, that's not where they were coming from. Like, I think their influences and what they were listening to was kind of different. So I think that's one of the reasons why they're underrated and maybe didn't get all the attention they deserved. Because while I don't think it's not that it's like, you wouldn't listen to The Art of Disappointment and go, oh my God, how was this on Drive Thru Records? It's not that crazy different, but they're kind of like the RX Bandits, where it's like, after a while, they weren't the typical drive-thru band per se. Like, The Art of Disappointment came out, I believe, in 2001. And if you look at the other stuff that was coming out in 2001 on Drive Thru Records, it's not as pop punk, it's not, and it's definitely not screamo or anything like that. I mean, it's nowhere.
Definitely not.
Yeah, it's not. They're not a band like, like Finch or Census Fail or Hidden in Plain View, but same with that too. They also don't have that like hardcore like side like New Found Glory and stuff. I mean, I would say at times they definitely have pop punk elements, and like I said, I think it made sense when they toured with drive-thru bands. Like, I know Ben was telling me they toured with Alistair and stuff. And I mean, a bunch of other drive-thru bands too. But I mean, there were ones that they got along with and they liked and I think were fans of. But yeah, I mean, weren't the same thing. I don't think they were the same kind of band. They weren't a SoCal punk band. They were a band from Wisconsin. I think they liked a lot of power pop and a lot of different things that maybe weren't the typical drive-thru thing at the time. But I think that's part of the reason why it was underrated. And I think Drive Thru, they love those. Like, I know I've talked to, I don't know them like you do, but I think online, I don't know, like on Twitter or something, telling Stephanie once or twice that mentioning that record, like, you should press it on vinyl or this and that. And she's always said that's a great, I'm pretty sure she said it was like one of her favorite Drive Thru releases, if I'm remembering correctly. Like, I think they stand behind it. It's not that the label didn't stand behind it or didn't like help out with it. I just think it was a band that like they were a little pop punk, but never were They weren't trying to be, though. Like, that was the thing, is they weren't trying to be the Starting Line or like Newfound Glory or any of that. So they're a little different. So I think that's part of why they were just never as big as a lot of the other bands who, came out on Drive Thru in 2001. But, Art of Disappointment, to me, it's that really nice, because it never leans too far into anything. It has pop punk, but it's not like a cheesy pop punk record or anything. It's a little more, it is a little more mature. It's almost like, it's kind of like if you look at like Say It Like You Mean It, and you have that and it's written by like someone in their teens. I feel like The Art of Disappointment is kind of like pop punk once it's a little older. Like, not old, but it's like kind of like pop punk once it hits like its mid-20s. Like, I think, because I've always loved that record, and I found it when I was 19 when I got it. And this, I think I talked about it a little on when I was talking about Drive Thru Records on the podcast before. But that album I found at FYE, and I bought it because it had the Drive Thru logo on it. I really didn't know much about the Benjamins. I may have heard 3750 to 1. I think I might have heard that song, because I probably had the Welcome to the Family comp. But if I did, that was the most I knew about the Benjamins. I knew the one song. And I picked up that record at FYE because it had the Drive Thru logo on it. But you listen to it, and at the time I was a fan of it. But as I get older, I like it more and more. Because like I was saying, it's like, it's pop punk, but it's not entirely. But it's like, it's mature. It's kind of more mature pop punk, like in a way where it's like the lyrics are a little more mature. Like, my favorite song on it is Dr. Frank Was Right. And it's like, to me, it's still very, it's as, I'm going to use the word emo. I hate using that word, but the lyrics are as emo as, say, like some of the Starting Line lyrics are. But it's more emo from, I would say, someone in like college or post-college than, say, someone in high school. Like if you listen to Say It Like You Mean It to think about the girl broke your heart in high school, you listen to Art of Disappointment and think like the girl broke your heart in college. Like, if that kind of makes sense, it's like it's kind of like the next step up in like, I guess, maturity. I don't know. Sometimes it's weird to say an album is mature, but I just think it's a great record and a one and done from them. They put out, before that, they put one EP out, and then they did put out a great EP back in 2013, the Back on Track EP on Johnny, their drummer, Goodland Record, his label, Goodland Records, which I would say definitely go, including right now, if you're listening to this when this comes out, because my dude Johnny is a musician and everything, and with all this shit going on, bands can't play, and I know he runs, being a musician and also running a record label, this is a terrible time for all that. So yeah, if you're listening to this, you should go support and go find that Benjamin's Back on Track EP on Goodland Records, because go support Johnny and them, because he's a really good dude, good label, and at this time could probably use some help while all these venues and shit are shut down. But anyway, yeah, a band that just, not a lot out there, kind of like I guess more in the Stellar Life, in the sense that at least they have a full length out, but kind of like the Stellar Life in that way, where it's like not a whole lot out there. You go look them up, and it's like you can go listen to their whole discography in about 2 hours. You can hear like everything they ever put out. And I'm sad we never got more from them. But The Art of Disappointment is it's really good, and it's also a testament to Drive Thru Records, I would say, because, like I keep saying, it doesn't sound like everything else that was on the label at the time, and it also shows that they would take chances, because it's not. I don't know that they ever signed the Benjamins going, this band is gonna make us millions. I think they truly signed them because they're a good band, because they liked what they were doing. What I really like about Richard and Stephanie is with Drive Thru Records, you look at the bands they signed, and I do feel like there was quality control there, where they signed bands if they liked them. I don't think they just signed bands to sign them. Like with major labels.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
And you can talk about that because you know them. And it's like with me.
I know Richard, but yeah, definitely. That's how Richard is. He doesn't sign anyone if he doesn't like them. And if he thinks they're shit, he will definitely not sign them, and he'll be upfront. He'll say their shit to the face.
I respect that so much, though, because all you ever hear are these horror stories from like record, like major labels or bands say, they got screwed over by a major label, and it's always the same thing where just choose the era. You go, Nirvana was big, so this major label was signing everything that sounded like Nirvana. Blink-182 was big, so this major label signed anything that sounded like Blink-182. You always hear those things. Drive Thru Records didn't do that. Drive Thru Records instead was the label that were putting out those bands that I mentioned earlier, everyone started ripping off. Like when emo and screamo got big, they were the ones who had already put out like Finch and Senses Fail. Like they were putting out those bands before that shit got big. Same with like.
So leading into this, can I
Go right ahead, dog.
this conversation?
Go right ahead.
So I'm totally gonna tell my origin story of how I met Richard.
Do it up. This is very interesting.
So I was balls deep in New Found Glory at the time, and I was really just obsessed with New Found Glory, and just like I knew that they were kind of associated with Blink-182. I knew that the guitarist played Tom DeLonge Strats, which I was also like fascinated with, and so I did a guitar cover, and I was really big into those, and like from like 2008 to 2012 or 13, and I would do these guitar covers, and they got some traction. I'm not gonna lie, they had like at least like a couple thousand views like every time I uploaded. Not like insane views, but like at least like 2,000 or 3,000. And I did one cover, and it was Head On Collision by New Found Glory off of Sticks and Stones, their 2002 album. And I kind of just like uploaded that, and I let it sit. And then I was always like checking my inbox on YouTube, because as like I don't even know, like a 14-year-old, I wasn't like checking my email. I was checking my YouTube inbox, and I got an email, or I got a YouTube message, like a private message from this guy, which turned out to be Richard, from the owner of Drive Thru Records. And he was like, I liked your New Found Glory cover. I'm actually the guy who signed New Found Glory. And like, as like a skeptic, like 14-year-old, I was like, no, you didn't. Just like, I was like, no, like, because YouTube was just like, everyone was trolling everyone. And if you don't know what trolling means, it's just like everyone was just trying to like fuck with everyone.
Oh, dude, if someone told, like, the thing is too, like, me and you are such fans of Drive Thru now that it's like we know who Richard and Stephanie are, and I feel like a lot of people who are fans of Drive Thru know who they are. But for the most part, no one, you know what I mean? Like, as far as A&R guys go, yeah, like, it's not like you would know off the top of your head when he goes, like, I signed, like, you'd look at the name and go, oh, yeah, it's Richard. Like, of course he signed him. So I totally see why you'd be skeptical that some guy just tells you that he signed New Found Glory. Like, you don't know who the hell the A&R, like, anyone could say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was like 14 years old. He was like, my name is Richard Rhines. I signed New Found Glory before they were like New Found Glory. And I was just like, no, you didn't. And he just kind of convinced me, and went back and forth through email, and eventually like switched to text. And then after that, he like asked if I wanted to bring my band and myself to Chicago and hang out with a band that he was working with at the time, which was All Star Weekend, which was like, they were on a subset label of like Disney Channel Records at the time.
They were pretty big too, weren't they?
Yeah, they so like, you know how like the Jonas Brothers had like a music video on like Disney Channel in between like the Disney Channel shows.
Oh yeah.
So did All Star Weekend.
Oh yeah, that's huge exposure. I mean, that's I mean, anything Disney, obviously, and yeah, being on the Disney Channel, yeah, it's some really good exposure.
Yeah, so he was like, I manage All Star Weekend, and you know, I'd love to have your band come up. So after kind of just like talking to my dad for like ever, because I was like 15, I was like, hey, can we go like hang out with this guy that manages some bands that like I really like, and like signed one of my favorite bands, you know, when I was young. And like, he really didn't take it from me, but like what made it work was when I gave Richard my dad's number. Richard actually called my dad while I was at school, and had a conversation with my dad. And then so we eventually went up to Chicago, hung out with All Star Weekend and Richard, and it was just a really good time. We hung out with the band, and we lost my bass player. He was sticking his hands up of girl shirts It was literally like there were like 13,000 like single women there that were like around our age. Not 13,000, 1,300. I'm sorry, but still
a lot.
We were like, where is Max? And then we like looked down on the floor, and then like Max has his like hand up this girl's shirt, and like they're like dancing to like Disney Channel rock.
Oh hell yeah! And that's how he met his first wife.
No, definitely not. But yeah, it was just like a really unique experience. Like we like walked around Chicago. He took like a press photo of us.
Oh,
and
nice.
Like nothing happened because what ended up happening was he wanted us to come to California to like hang out with him and maybe potentially record an EP. And my parents didn't want that to happen, and neither did any of the other band members' parents because we were just so young. And I know that's like the prime age of like signing artists because that way they can grow with you. But I think it was partially my fault because like if I really wanted to do it, I would have done it. But you know, I really wanted to finish high school, and obviously I wanted to go to college. So I don't know. I think I made the right decision. But me and Richard are still really good friends to this day. He's still a bro. We still text all the time. He still gives me shit all the time. He's just a really funny guy. And, you know, I'm like happy that I had that like situation happen to me because, you know, I think it made me like in hindsight, like it made me work harder as like a pop punk musician because like he would always tell me, he was like, you love pop punk so much, like that genre is dead. And I would always be like, I'm gonna revive this myself. Like I'm gonna single-handedly revive pop punk. And he'd be like, okay, Zachy.
I like that.
He'd be like, okay, you do what you want.
All right, go defend pop punk.
I'd be like so adamant about it. And he totally knew that like it wasn't gonna happen. And that's like kind of what I appreciate about him because like after I kind of like grew up and realized like pop punk wasn't going to happen again. I mean, whoever knows, like it could happen, but for the most part, he kind of like made me realize that it was not going to happen again. And, you know, he turned me on to some really great other artists. Like one of his newer bands is called The Rex, and The Rex are really good. They have a song called My Favorite Liar, or Favorite Liar, I'm sorry. And it is a really great track. So if anyone wants to check out a really good track that's like reminiscent of Drive Thru Records, but it's also like modern, check out The Rex, Favorite Liar.
And you know that you bring up a good point of what I think is a strong point of Drive Thru Records and of Richard and Stephanie is that it could be very easy for Richard to be set in his ways and go, I signed all these pop punk bands and like, you know, and die on that hill basically, go, this is my legacy, this is all I do. But he has that where it goes, you know, he signed all those bands and was so responsible for a lot of that early 2000s pop punk sound, but he can realize when to walk away from that. You know what I mean? Like that says something where like current 100%. Day he's not trying to like shit out another band that sounds like The Starting Line or something. Like I don't think they ever did that, you know, which once again goes back to what we were talking about, how like they were never the ones putting out those bands who were ripping off the other ones. They were putting out basically the bands that other bands would go to rip off. But they wouldn't go sign those bands. You know what I mean? Like they had, I don't even remember what he said exactly, but for people who don't know, Dashboard Confessional was signed to Drive Thru Records for like a hot minute. And I heard an interview he did with like Alternative Press years ago. It's an old podcast, probably still out there. Actually a really good podcast to go check out if you can still find it. This was like over a decade ago, but I also remember listening to it, and Richard turned me on to the Jesus and Mary chain during that because he played them. But anyways, what he said in there is kind of along the lines of that, is we had the original Dashboard Confessional. Why would we sign another? Because I think that's what they asked him in there. It's like, did you ever think after like Dashboard Confessional, like why didn't you sign more bands that sounded like that? Or like after Senses Fail, why didn't you sign more bands like that? And he said something along those lines of, we had the originals. Why would we do that? Like, we had Dashboard Confessional. Why would we get like a watered down version? You know, same with like Senses Fail and shit. We had the good, you know, we had the bands who were good. Why would we grab a band just because they vaguely sound, you know, similar to a band that had some success on our label? But that speaks volumes that he can go, you know, and also that he can go through all these different eras too. Because, you know, Drive Thru kind of started more as a punk and ska label, and kind of as that thing evolved and it kind of turned into something different, you know, I feel like they evolved with the times and also had a lot of, you know, kind of responsibility, like I said, for the sound that got popular. But, you know, they never died on one hill, basically. They never said, we're a ska label, so in 2003 we're still releasing ska records. No, they didn't do that. They started putting out pop punk records. And after that, you know, they kind of started putting out the heavier post-hardcore stuff. And then look at that. By 2007, look at Hello Goodbye. I mean, Hello Goodbye was huge. You know, listen to Here in Your Arms. That doesn't sound like, you know, what they were doing 5 years prior. They changed with the times, but in a good way, not in a desperation way either of like, well, what's popular now? They changed when they saw it made sense. You know, they went, okay, this sound is kind of, you know, it's been done. It's like on to the next thing. And I think that's important, and also why we're still talking about the label to this day. You know, a label that's not even really active and, you know, I mean, does things on and off, but really hasn't been fully active since 2007, 2008 would be the last time they were like, like actually putting out a bunch of different releases, not just one-offs, like putting out releases, putting out comps and DVDs and stuff. It's been well over a decade plus now. And the fact that we're still talking about them is because Richard and Stephanie, you know, I mean, the best A&R people probably, in my opinion, like the two best A&R people in the world. Like really, like you look at the bands they signed and that was them. You know, it wasn't like an A&R department. It was them signing them. And then, you know, same with that. I mean, we talked about a little with the starting line, and I won't say a whole lot about it because I just don't know all the specifics. But, you know, like with those upstreaming deals with Geffen that Drive Thru got fucked on, where basically Geffen could like grab bands from the Drive Thru roster and go, okay, they're ours now. And, you know, with that, though, you look at it and you go, all those bands that ended up on major labels like the Starting Line, and I'm trying to think of some others, like the Starting Line did. I want to say Phoenix TX. No, I think Lechuza might have been.
Yeah, they did.
Yes.
It was on MCA.
MCA, that's right. So, yeah, there's like, you know any other
Starting
ones?
Line, Newfound Glory,
Newfound.
Phoenix. Actually, I want to say Homegrown was too, but I doubt
they weren't, because they didn't have enough. Because Kings of Pop was Drive Thru, then they put out an EP on Drive Thru, and then they broke up. They may have been
Something Corporate was definitely on. Geffen.
Yes, you were right about that. Yeah, their second record, I can't think of, North, I think was Geffen. But anyway.
No, dude, Leaving Through a Window was definitely on Geffen.
Oh, that was too? Oh shit, so
or MCA.
Oh, okay. So then the only one that was really, I mean, like they had
and
the Drive
Finch too. You know, Finch.
Oh
was
yeah,
too.
Finch was for the second record though, right? What Is to Burn was Drive Thru.
What It Is to Burn was on MCA.
Oh really? Okay, no, I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
But see, this is a good example. Like I was saying, is those bands ended up on major labels, but it's not like major labels found them. They were on Drive Thru found them. Like Richard and Stephanie found those bands. Like they're the ones who created and are responsible for that, you know, for that pop punk sound. I always say it, but I mean, that's the defining sound of an era. I mean, that is such a huge thing to say a label is responsible. I'm saying that label was responsible for popular music within the fucking punk scene for like 5 years. Like anything that happened from like 2000 to 2005, like the trends in like punk rock music, the style, all that stuff was Drive Thru. Drive Thru was the label, man. That was the, that label meant so much to music and to people at that time, that to the fact that they were that impressionable on it. There were a lot of other great labels too at that time, but none like Drive Thru. The fact, I've mentioned it before on the show when I was talking about my favorite record labels. Most people don't know this much about labels. Like, we're sitting here gushing over a record label. Most people don't know who the hell releases, their favorite stuff, like, including like major labels. Like, no one's doing like their top 5 favorite like Geffen record releases. Like, people don't do that. It's
True.
labels like this that are so damn special, years later. And it's because they didn't screw it up and try to beat a dead horse or anything like that. Like, we're not looking back going, yeah, Drive Thru Records was really good for 3 years, and then they started signing every band that sounded like Newfound Glory. They didn't do that. And I think in the long run, they probably could have made even more money. The funny thing is, if they would have done that, they probably would be filthy rich off of it, but they didn't. And what they got instead is the longevity of it, where we're still talking about to this day. They create a product in the end that has longevity that you can talk to, that we don't forget about it. There's a lot of labels that went by the wayside from, the early 2000s, late 90s that we don't remember, that we don't talk about because we don't remember. I'm sure they put out great releases, but no one's talking about them. But with Drive Thru, people still love them. I get emails about it. That's the other thing why I love, talking about them on the podcast so much. It's not the first time I mentioned them, far from the last time I mentioned them on here, but it's that. There's something special about them that we can talk about, and people still like it. Because I get emails and stuff, and people go like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like, they like hearing this stuff because it's nostalgic for them, and they remember all these stories that we're talking about. In years earlier, like me and you kind of discovered them after the fact, but there's so many people who were there when this stuff was coming out who, saw Drive-Thru bands on the Drive-Thru stage at Warped Tour, or, remember going to the record store to buy like the Drive Thru Records DVD. So, that label really created something special that a lot of labels just can't do. That labels, a lot of labels have no faces and no one really cares for them. But Drive Thru Records, I would argue, was as important as the bands that they released. Honestly, like, people love them.
I agree.
Like, right? Like, people don't do that with every label. People really don't. Like, people don't give a shit about half the record labels out there. And it's just the truth. I love a good record label with a great roster, but it's just the fact. People like the bands and they don't think about the labels as much. But with Drive Thru, it's kind of the opposite. People love Drive Thru, and with good reason. But anyways, let's, as we're kind of closing up here, it's time to get to our number one. And I guess I kind of screwed yours up. I guess people probably already know.
You're good.
But Zach, what is your number one? Surprise us all.
It is Say It Like You Mean It.
Oh,
by
shit.
Buddy.
Did not guess that. that is.
I only said that during the What It Is to Burn.
So we talked about it a little bit already, man, but go ahead. If you got anything else to add about this, man, go on. What makes it your favorite Drive Thru release?
Okay, well, first of all, it's just obviously a great pop punk album. Like, Up and Go just has all the elements of a great pop punk song, and it's the opening track of the album. I actually told Richard at one point, I told him that Say It Like You Mean It and like Enema of the State are kind of synonymous for me, because they're both really great albums that I can't stop at all when I'm listening to them. And he was surprised by that, because I don't know. Obviously, like, Blink's so much bigger than the Starting Line, but I was really into this album. When I obviously found probably The Best of Me when I was in high school. And I listened to that track over and over again. I thought it was a really good song. And then through that, I found like Bedroom Talk, and then the Direction album and everything. But it wasn't until college that I listened to all of Say It Like You Mean It. And it couldn't have been the most relatable time, because I was actually, to me, this album is about dealing with a long distance relationship.
I could see that.
That's what this album is to me, because it's like literally the album cover is someone sitting on a couch with a phone. And to me, this album is like literally dealing with a long distance relationship. When I listened to this album all the way through, I was dating a girl in my hometown while I was away at school. And we were at long distance, of course. And I would hear songs like A Good Night's Sleep and Cheek to Cheek, where it was just like, you know, like I knew that like we were together, but it didn't feel like we were together, and there was like something separating us. And I feel like I literally listened to this album and I became more aware of my situation at the time.
Really?
Yes, because I just feel like this album literally just like was singing about what I was going through at that specific moment. And I know Kenny was 17 when he wrote that album. But he went on tour and he left probably like his high school girlfriend back at home, and he was away from her, and they were probably like, he probably wrote that album about that girl that like he left back at home. And I was at college, like thinking about a girl that I left back at home.
That's really interesting. I never thought about it, but it's like I think you're totally right that album has a lot to do with long distance relationship. I never thought of that all that much, but it's funny. Like, I mean, like you're saying with if you know the album cover, anyone who hasn't seen it, I mean, it is quite literally a chick on the couch, like with the phone to her ear, and album's called "Say It Like You Mean It," and it's kind of, I guess you kind of start thinking about that, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and you think of some of the lyrics and everything. And I mean, even Kenny, like you were saying, going out and touring for the first time, probably leaving his high school girlfriend behind, I can definitely see that. And also, how good is that? It goes back to what a good songwriter he is, that you can listen to that, you can relate to it to the point where you go, it sounds like he wrote it for me. And like you were saying, it made you realize your situation even more, which that's good songwriting. Like, to me, that's damn good songwriting. I think you'd agree. When you write a song, I mean, for you personally as well, it's like you're trying to convey emotion in someone. You want someone to hear that song and get something out of it. You know what I mean? You don't want them just to listen to it and just go, oh, it sounded nice. You would like them, ultimately you'd like them to feel something when they hear it, and you'd like them to relate it to their life somehow. And, I mean, to be able to do that to an entire album too, not just a song, to have an entire album that really does that, I think is really saying something. And, how about that one? What's your favorite song off Say It Like You Mean It?
Can I give you two?
I don't give a shit, dude. You can give me three.
Well, I'm going to give you three. So
okay, do it up.
So I'm gonna give you the top to the bottom. So it's going to be Cheek to Cheek is my number one.
Nice.
I just think that song has an insane pop punk riff. And, literally the lyrics are just like really beautiful, and like A Good Night's Sleep, it's just like, it's kind of like, if you're gonna sleep with another dude, go ahead and do it. I don't want to hear about it.
Sleep in your own bed tonight.
Sleep in your own bed tonight. Quit sleeping in other dudes' beds. And Up and Go is obviously like one of my other favorites. Like, when I sit down and I plug in my Tom DeLonge Stratocaster and I want to listen to some Say It Like You Mean It, I play those three tracks: Up and Go, Cheek to Cheek, and A Good Night's Sleep.
That's a fun album to play along to.
Oh, definitely.
That I'd say my favorite song on there has to, and you picked all good. It's another one. There's not a bad song on it, so it's like I I know it just sounds like we're agreeing with one another the whole time, but it goes back to just how good these albums are. It's like, there's not a bad song. Yeah, like I can't sit here and say you picked bad songs. They're all good.
Oh, none of the songs are bad.
No, there's not
it's
one
just
bad
like
one.
Those are like my favorites.
Mine has to be Saddest Girl Story. It's the energy of it. Like, that's what I love about it. That song to me and it's like not even, I'll say this, there's probably other songs on there that I would relate to more, or go like maybe on a more lyrical level or something. I go like, okay, I relate to that one more. But as far as just my favorite song, just in the sense of I love, it's fast, it's loud, it's a pop punk song. That's all it is. It's a fast pop punk song. And that's what I love about it. I actually remember in college back in 2014, when I was still in community college, one of my last classes, I did like the history of like American music. It was something like that. But our last project was to do like a presentation of a band and then kind of like describe them like through like 10 PowerPoint slides. It was like, and it kind of used some music theory, like, like different things about them. Like, I think some of the chord progressions they use, like what their genre would be considered, kind of talk about their biography and stuff. And I used that song. I talked about the starting line, and then for, you want a good example of the band. So I use that song. I'm like, the kids in this class aren't really going to know the starting line. Maybe one or two people did, but it's like, in 2014, I'm the only 21-year-old who's like, listening to the starting line. Maybe that's not true, but a lot of others didn't know who the hell they were. Everyone loved it. I mean, I remember the teacher was into it too, but like, that's such a good representation of that band, because you play that for people who had never heard them. I played it for a classroom full of people who never heard the starting line, and they were all into it because they got what they were going for. Because even people in there who maybe aren't pop punk fans or know much about it, they know like Blink-182 and Green Day and whatnot, and they're kind of like, oh yeah, it's like that. But even kind of faster and a little more like, to me, kind of more what pop punk is. It's polished.
I agree, dude. I so agree with that.
Isn't it? It's a great just representation of like this is a pop punk
I'd
band.
say that Green Day is more punk than the starting line is punk.
Yes, that's a good. Yes, you're right about that.
The starting line is more pop punk than Green Day is pop punk.
Yes, I know exactly what you're saying, and I agree 100% with that. And yeah, I mean, like, everyone loved it. Like, everyone was really stoked on it because it is. It's just,
yeah,
it's
love.
catchy.
I'll just say this over and over again. I love Say It Like You Mean It, and it got me through a serious time and just made me think about like what I was going through. And literally, like, if you haven't listened to Say It Like You Mean It, and you're in a long distance relationship, listen to it, but don't cry. And also don't call up your ex-girlfriend feeling all emo, saying that like you miss her after you listen to the starting line Say It Like You Mean It, because that's a fucking mistake. I will tell you from experience.
I like that. I would go one step further and say, get yourself in a long distance relationship just to get into this record. Go get in a long distance. Go meet someone. Get a long distance relationship and fuck up your own relationships. You can relate to this album. I would go that far. This album is so good. You should go fuck up any prospects of a happy future with your significant other, so you can relate to this.
Damn it, Anthony.
Good
thing this is a podcast.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good thing it's a podcast, so people can listen to this for years now. And people in 2040, someone's gonna be listening to this and go like, I thought I wanted to find the perfect girl. I guess that's wrong. I want to relate to this pop punk album that came out 40 years ago. At this point, Kenny Vasoli's like 70. Actually, I'm saying that like it's a long time. It's like 20 years from now. I don't know. Kenny Vasoli's like in his 40s or something. I don't know. You all get what I'm saying.
Now. He's like 30. He'll be like in his 50s.
Is he? Yeah, I guess he would be. He's still fucking young though. Like I looked this up the other day. I don't remember what his age is, but it's insane when you think about it. He's like 32 or something. Because I was thinking about the other thing when I saw them on the Say It Like You Mean It tour they did in 2013, which they didn't play the whole record front to back. Certain shows they did. The one I saw, what they did instead, which I can't complain. They probably, Say It Like You Mean It has, I think, 12 or 13 tracks, and they played 9. Which I will. Here's my bitch though. they didn't play Saddest Girl Story. They played almost every single song on that record except for my favorite. They didn't play that. I don't think they played The Ride, This Ride, and there was another one they didn't play. And I was actually surprised by the third one. It was a song you would have thought they would have played. Like Saddest Girl Story, I guess I kind of get, because like it's my favorite, but it's kind of like my favorite on Sticks and Stones, where it's like it's a little later on in the album. It's not the single. It's a little further in. So I feel like people kind of forget about it. But I saw them play most of it live. But even then, what I was getting at is that was for the 10th anniversary of Say It Like You Mean It, and Kenny Vasoli at that time was how old I am now. He would have been 27, and he was celebrating the 10th anniversary of a record which I'm pretty sure went gold, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's a gold record. Either way, sold a ton of albums for them. Like you were saying, they're not as big as Green Day. They're not a household name. But as far as like pop punk goes, that's a big band. You know what I mean? Like,
oh hell yeah,
not mainstream, but as far as just in this scene, that's a big band. They're a pretty large band, I would say. So that's insane to think that like at 27 you're celebrating the 10th anniversary of this record that was huge for your band and one of the best selling probably Drive Thru Records, albums. I mean, like I was saying earlier too, like I would think Hello Goodbye. I bet Hello Goodbye, I would say New Found Glory had probably the most like records sold. I bet Hello Goodbye sold the most singles. I bet Here in Your Arms, like, because that was also an era of digital too. That was kind of the beginning of iTunes where you could just buy the singles. And I feel like Here in Your Arms was probably like the best selling. You'll have to ask Richard this sometime, but I imagine like their best selling is probably like Here in Your Arms as far as like singles go. As far as albums sold, I bet it's New Found Glory. But Starting Line was up there. Say Like You Mean It has to be up in like one of their best selling. You know what I mean? Like I would.
No, dude, I know what you mean.
I feel like I've said as much as I can about Say Like You Mean It. It's come as no surprise that I'm with you. I mean,
of course,
it's one of the best.
I want to know your number one now.
Well, thank you, dude, because I was about to say it. I went like with your number 5 being a comp. My first is a compilation, and I guess if you're singing at home going, nah, dude, that doesn't count, then I guess Art of Disappointment would be my number 1. But if compilations count, Drive Thru Records, You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again, my number 1 pick. And it's the same reason why I think you picked Welcome to the Family. It really defines a certain era of Drive Thru Records. And it's the early one. It's basically the
1999.
beginning. Yeah, it is early. I mean, that's a 20 plus year album now, and it shows the early side of Drive Thru Records. A lot less polished than a lot of the bands later on. It shows the bands really young. I mean, that's like New Found Glory's on there when they were still a New Found Glory, and it's like early,
that's true.
Yeah, like early shit from Nothing Gold Can Stay, like right after they were off Fiddler Records, going to Drive Thru. Phoenix TX, you know what, I want to say they were still River Phoenix on there, and if they weren't, they had just changed their name. Like a lot of bands like that where like that's them starting out. And on top of that, I mean, some of my favorite, like, the names I'm about to say probably people have never heard unless you're like a really hardcore Drive Thru fan. I'm sure there's some you may haven't even listened to, dude, but like Mother Mania, Cousin Oliver, Caught Inside, Last Summer, even I believe 12 Gallons was their name, which never put out a full length, but they did the Carter the Cat song, which is one of the classics on You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again. And just some really like the obscure like bands that were on that created that label, really, that are, maybe weren't the big bands, but are the reason that, the label got traction in the first place and could later on become so big. But this is a few years prior to them becoming what they were going to become. And it's much more like punk and ska, it's like RX Bandits when they were, still very ska punk influenced, a little less kind of jam bandy, and the same with the Wrens. There's a couple songs on there from when the Wrens were going to sign, which that's another weird one. That to me would have been much weirder than like the Benjamins or RX Bandits were. Like, had the Wrens been on Drive Thru Records, it would have been interesting if you know anything about them. But a couple of different versions of Wrens songs end up on the Meadowlands that are exclusive to that comp. So just a bunch of different special stuff. There's also like There's like an unreleased Phoenix TX song on there that I don't think ever to this day has never been released anywhere but that comp. There's so many reasons why I love it. And I think the thing I love the most about it is the innocence of it. Like Welcome to the Family is like them at their peak, but You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again is them kind of finding their footing and really starting out. It's fun. It's a fun compilation. The songs are fun. The lyrics are cheesy. You know what I mean? Like not all of them. I'm not saying all of them are, but it's like there's a lot of songs with just funny, cheesy lyrics that a lot of bands had in, those like mid to late 90s that, kind of went away later on when bands got a little more serious. But it's just a fun compilation. And it's the layout and stuff too. I mean, you talk about how good they are with that stuff. Like Welcome to the Family, like what a great design with the pizza box and all that. And with You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again, it's just another really cool one. Like I love the front of it. It has this kind of like 1950s style to it. It has the old school Drive Thru Records logo, not the one everyone knows, but that real old fucking one. And and the stories inside too, the liner notes in there are great. They're all stories from people writing in talking about terrible things they did as fast food workers. I mean, yeah, spitting in people's food. There was something about like how they prepared popcorn at this place, which is so funny now. These people have to be like 40 or 50 at this point, but at the time, were like teenagers or like in their mid 20s, kind of talking about the shit they did in like their college jobs and stuff. Just some really funny stuff that like once again solidified, I think, how special that label was for people, because it was something that you know what I mean? Like you would read through the liner notes and you would get a kick out of it. And I think even Richard and Stephanie wrote stuff in there. I mean, they were the ones with the idea for the, given it's called You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again, and then all that stuff is in the liner notes. So it's like it makes you like that label because it's an extension. It's not just these songs are good. You start looking, you start reading the stories inside. You're looking at the artwork. You're looking at the merch catalog it comes with. And that's when you start to realize, like how good that label is. And I feel like that compilation was also the first one. It's not the first compilation I ever heard, but I think that's where I started realizing how important those things are. That I went, because I learned so many bands, Mother Mania, Cawdonside, Last Summer, Cousin Oliver, all those bands I discovered from that compilation. And then from there, I went and found those bands. I found their full lengths. And then from there, I'd go find more bands. So it's like, it's a domino effect of I found this band through that comp, and then I found this band, then this band, then this band. And one of the funnest things, too, you have to hunt down. Some of those bands are so obscure just in the sense of, they missed the whole internet thing. Like half of those bands probably had, like, back in the day, like a GeoCities or like Angel Fire account, like fucking way back, like yeah, like things that you can't even find anymore, like that you might find on like a Wayback Machine or something. But like back when that was like all you had online, long before MySpace or anything, like even predating like Friendster and stuff. So it's like these aren't bands who, like nowadays you can even like the Stellar Life, like we're saying go check out the Stellar Life. They may not have put much. You can though, yeah. That's the thing. It's like you can go find some of that shit. Like they do have, they're
but
on.
It's difficult.
It is, but I mean, like there's still like social media shit out there, and there's more out there now that you can find of a band from say like a more obscure band from say 2012 than you could from like an obscure band from 1998, because those bands just didn't. All that stuff on the internet's been wiped out. And, it was pre-social media. So, like, Mother Mania is a good one where it's like, I had to hunt down their record, and there's still so many albums of theirs. I don't even know what the album cover looks like. I know they exist because I've seen the names, but I don't know what the album covers look like. I don't know what the songs sound like. You can't find them. And, like, I got a ton of Mother Mania stuff from the guy who used to run Montgomery Records. But I had to hunt it down, dude. Like, this was like 4 years after becoming a fan of Mother Mania. I bought something off him, I think, like on eBay. And I forget what I bought from him, but it was something that made me, like, kind of tipped me off that he, like, had some kind of connection to Mother Mania. So I'm like, hey, man, do you have, like, anything else by chance? And he's like, oh, yeah. Like, I think he almost, like, released some stuff from them after Drive Thru or, like, something. He had some relation to him and sent me, like, all this Mother Mania music. Like, I had, like, 50 songs or something. Like, I hit the jackpot. But I'm telling, that took me 4 years. Before that, I heard their full-length on Drive Thru Records, The Sound and the Fury, which is great. That's also, it's not on my top 5, And that's kind of why I picked You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again, because it's kind of that blanket thing where I can kind of talk about all these bands that I love without trying to figure out which is my favorite, because that's very hard to do. But, Mother Mania, Sound of the Fury is a great album, but that's all I heard forever. And like 4 years later, I finally found a guy who just so happened to have like 50 Mother Mania songs, that I'd never heard. But it's like, we're spoiled nowadays. You can find so many bands on Spotify and whatnot, and there's so many bands on You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again where if you want to go find them, you got to go hunt it down, because some of those bands, some of them on there that weren't signed to Drive Thru maybe had a 7-inch out or maybe a demo cassette. They didn't even have a full length. At least with like Cousin Oliver and Mother Mania, you can go get like one full length. But same with like Last Summer. That one probably took the longest. I was hunting down Last Summer's Remember Those Days, their only album on Drive Thru Records, and probably their only record at all. They were originally called Supermarket All-Stars and were a great ska band and put out a bunch of stuff as them. But Last Summer didn't have very much out, and it's like that took me years, like literally years, to track down a copy of Remember Those Days. I finally found one on eBay. I think I paid like $20 for, which when you think about it, for an obscure album from a band that no one knows who Last Summer is. Nobody does. You probably have never listened to Last Summer. Like, no one knows who the hell that is, and you're still
not wrong.
Yeah, and you still got to pay $20, to get their CD. But that's what I love about this comp, and it started that for me. You know what I mean? Like, it started my hunt for compilations and, for like discovering these obscure bands and then going and hunting them down. And, even to the point of like finding old members. Like, I've hit up so many members, and I know you have too, for bands. It was like, I just hit them up and go like, hey, I saw your name in the liner notes of this. Like, do you happen to be the bass player of like this band? And it's like, sometimes you find music that way. It's funny you do. Like, I've done that more than a few times where it's like I find some guy and I go, the name looks, it's like it's the same name. And then it's like you start kind of like, you kind of not stalk, but you kind of look through their social media for a second and go like, okay, like, is there a picture from them in like 1998 touring with like, a bunch of like random punk bands and stuff? Like, you try to connect the dots and go, okay, was this person associated somehow? Okay, now I need to hit them up. And it's like, and this is shit now. This isn't like 90s stuff where people are talking about like doing this in the 90s where it's hard to like discover these bands. This is like present day. This is me in like 2011, 2012 doing this, like hunting down these bands, trying to find members of them to like ask them. Because also you can't find anything online. So it's like, okay, like you go find them. Say you find like the singer of one of those bands. You go, I know you had an album out on Drive Thru Records. Was there anything else out? Because also you don't know. You can't find it. Like, for all I know, some of these bands put out a couple 7-inches on like a local label, and you just, you can't find it. You can't scour the internet and find it anymore. So it's like you got to find people who were there to, even discover some of this. And I want to give a quick plug real quick too, on the subject, but a good person has a great show about this. Mike Doyle from the band Lane Meyer, great band too. But he does a show called This Was the Scene. I talk a lot about like New Jersey punk and ska from the early 2000s and late 90s. This whole podcast is on this. And that dude toured with all those bands. So, I mean, he's kind of doing what I'm talking about, and I love him for doing this. He's been doing it for a couple of years. But he interviews those guys, like hour-long conversations with people in these bands that I'm talking about that are so goddamn obscure, but were so good. They were maybe never huge. Maybe they were huge locally, but they predate that internet era and they're hard to find any information on. So, really more power and respect to Mike for doing an entire show where, he kind of talks to these guys, and I won't even say hunt down because I think he's friends with a lot of them, toured with a lot of them back in the day. But it's great to have someone documenting that stuff because it would be lost, Same with not Welcome to the Family. Same with You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again. Without that, there's so many bands I never would have, discovered. And then with that, I would never would have discovered more bands that I discovered through that. So, that's easily why it's my favorite. That compilation, extremely special, and also really did kickstart kind of the my love for Drive Thru Records. Not even my first Drive Thru comp. I had the Drive Thru Invasion comp and a couple others before that. But I actually Welcome to the Family I had before. No, I didn't. I take that back. Actually, here's what's funny, and I just remembered this. I bought You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again early on. It was one of the first drive-through comps, but I forgot about it. I bought it because Newfound Glory was on there, didn't really listen to it, and then a few years later I got into Phoenix TX, and they were on there. So I went back and listened to it. It was one of those things where I kind of bought it because it was cheap and then didn't really think about it again. And then a few years later, it's like I realized it, and I'm like, holy shit, like I love Drive Thru Records. And I mean, that really did. Like I think back to like 2011, and You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again was a huge reason why back then I think I really got into the label, and why we're sitting here, talking for 3 hours about Drive Thru Records, because of that compilation. So I have a lot that I owe to it. I'm indebted to it. It taught me a lot about an era too. Makes me very nostalgic. People used to discover bands that way, and I kind of went back and did the same thing that they did back in the day. So kind of cool in that way. But yeah, You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again. My favorite comp of all time, and also my favorite Drive Thru Records release. Have you ever listened to that comp or no?
Of course, I own it. I actually.
Oh, hell yeah.
So when I saw Newfound Glory back in November of 2019, I actually, what was it? Cyrus came out, and I was just like talking to everyone, and like a cool fact that like is a cool tie-in to all this. So I got You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again signed by Cyrus.
Oh, nice.
And he actually wrote the guitar riff for Hit or Miss.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he wrote like the 4-chord like power chord riff. Yeah, he wrote that. But one cool fact that I'm actually including in like a short story that I'm writing. When I met Cyrus, he was just such a nice guy. He was just talking about everything and nothing with all of his friends or like all of his fans. And it was only like 3 of us that were just like really interested in like talking to him. And then one thing he told me, because I was telling him that like I was obviously a big Blink fan, and that Sticks and Stones was my favorite album. And he told me that he broke his arm in October of 2001, and that he was like trying to heal it as fast as he could, because he was set to record Sticks and Stones in January 2002, and it was like up to the wire, like when he could like go into the studio, and Travis Barker from Blink-182 was set to record drums on Sticks and Stones.
Wow.
And 3 days before Cyrus healed, or 3 days before the album was set to like be taken to the studio, Cyrus came in and redid his drum parts. But Cyrus told me that he kind of kept a nod to that, where Travis Barker was kind of redoing his drum parts, where he was doing like, I don't really understand that much about drumming, but he did like a bell ride. He called it like a bell ride, or like a crash ride, I guess, a crash cymbal ride during the bridge of Understatement, like while the heavy part's going, and like there's just like a cymbal going in the background. That's what he told me. He said that he kept that as a nod to Travis Barker almost recording drums on the album.
Oh, that is sick. Now did Travis go in? Did it get to that where Travis did?
They
go?
Demoed it.
They
Apparently
did.
They demoed it.
Holy shit! So I wonder, like,
I would love to hear those.
Yeah,
demos.
Because those don't exist. I was trying to think if they're anywhere, but I've never heard those anywhere. Like,
no, they're probably not non-existent.
I bet they'll see the light of day one day for like the 30th anniversary reissue. We'll finally get them. That's funny because that's another band. When you think about it, like Newfound Glory and Blink-182 are 2 bands that, I mean, like, there's B-sides out there, but there's not many demos. You know what I mean? Like, you can't find a lot of like demos for either of them. I know there's like a few, like I know there's like a couple Enema of the State demos when like Scott Rayner was still in the band, like, but there's not, like Blink-182 is another band where there's some bands who release these deluxe editions and you get like every single demo they've ever done, the home recording, this and that. They've really never done that with Blink-182 or really Newfound Glory. Those are 2 bands you really can't find a lot of that stuff. And I'd be interested to hear that. I mean, it's crazy because, I mean, Cyrus and Travis are both punk drummers, and I don't think they're terribly different in sound, but that would still be interesting. Because, like, Travis is, like, the way he plays, you would wonder how different that would sound. Because what I will say is Travis does a lot more fills, but more than anyone, I'm not saying that, like, you know, Cyrus doesn't do, like, drum fills and shit. Travis Barker's style, though, is that, you know, he does a lot of fills and improvising and stuff. It would be interesting to hear, what that album would have sounded like. And then kind of funny then, you know, connecting that then, what's funny is, if I'm not mistaken, Travis Barker played drums on the last Goldfinger record, but Cyrus is correct. The one, and Cyrus is the one who was their live drummer. So Cyrus is out playing Travis's parts when he does the Goldfingers. That's pretty rad, actually. That's a really cool story. That is fucking cool, actually. Not really well known either, I don't think. I don't think many people know that Travis Barker was set to record on there. And then I was going to mention it earlier. Isn't Something I Call Personality, right? I think Mark Hoppus plays bass on that.
He plays bass on... Actually, so I actually clarified this with Cyrus when I was talking with him.
Clarify away.
So I thought that Mark Hoppus just played bass on the bridge of the song, because I could barely hear the bass on the song of the bridge. And I told Cyrus, I was like, you know, I own a Mark Hoppus production model, and I don't really think he has great tone, and I believe it can't really cut through a mix very well. And he was like, funny enough, Mark actually played bass throughout the whole song. Like, that's him playing bass throughout the whole song of Something I Call Personality. But he played it on Ian's bass, Ian, the bass player of Newfound Glory, because he just thought it matched the tone better of the album.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, so I always thought, like, Mark just played the bass for, like, the bridge of the song, but he played the bass for the entirety of the song with Ian Gresh's bass.
Oh, that's really cool. And then he ended up, a couple albums later, he ended up producing them with Not Without a Fight. Mark was a producer on.
That's a really good album, too.
That is, including later era, like Newfound Glory, including coming off of Coming Home. You know, I feel like that was it was kind of like, you know, going back to their roots, if you will, in a lot of ways. I was listening to that recently. That one actually does hold up really well. I was listening to it like just a few days ago, actually. Drive around listening to it. And that one really does hold up well. Some of their best songs. Actually, really, I do say that. I don't think it's their best album. I think there's some of their best songs on it. There's a couple where I would probably say those are really solid, including singles. I think Listen to Your Friends is a pretty solid, as far as their singles go throughout the years, I think that's one of their catchier ones. But yeah, that's a great record. You can tell it's Mark Hoppus too on Something I Call Personality, because I always say Mark Hoppus's signature, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I love it. He likes playing fifths, and you can hear it on the in the bridge. He's playing those fifths on bass. Basically, I guess for people listening, if you know what a power chord is, like the name of the show, is and this, you know, this is just going to be more confusing, but basically a root and a fifth is a power chord, and bass plays the root note normally, but not the fifth. So what Mark normally does is will play them, but not together. So you hear that like dun 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 dun, and that's really not a fifth, but it's like that kind of going back and forth like that. He does that so much, including on bridges. Like What's My Age Again is a good example of that. He does the bridge of that has that the whole time. He's doing the same thing. And he does that in a lot of songs. That's kind of his, you know, because Mark doesn't really do fills a lot, but he'll normally add that in. He's normally a guy who kind of plays more in the pocket, does more root notes, but he'll kind of throw that in to break it up. You know, instead of kind of doing like moving bass lines, he'll throw a fifth in there, I've always noticed. So that's kind of like his calling card, in my opinion. And yeah, you can hear it on Something I Call Personality. But great song, great album. I mean, a lot of good cameos, too. Also, Matt and Danny from Alkaline Trio, they're on that record.
I know. What is it?
That's why I didn't say the name, because off the top of my head, I forgot what song it was.
I do know what song
Wait,
Matt
is it?
features on. It's Don't Tell Me. No, I love that album, so I have to know it.
I think it's the song after Sunny.
Hold on. I got
And
it.
if I had the chance to do it all again. That song.
The song after Sunny is something I call Personality, but I think it's Forget My Name.
Yes, it is. That is Forget My Name. It is. And we forgot the name. We forgot the name of the song, but that is the name of it. Forget My Name.
Yeah,
And that has them. And then also I think Toby Morse from H2O also is like on a song. And they have a couple, I think there's someone else. I can't think off the top of my head. I think there's like another cameo on there too. There's some really good ones. It's funny because a lot of those drive-through bands had cameos like on albums that you don't realize. Like Say It Like You Mean It has Nate from Finch does all the screaming on it. There's not a lot of screaming.
On This Ride?
Yeah, On This Ride. And then what's the other one? There's another song on there with like literally he screams like one word. It's like at the end of a bridge. He's like screaming whatever Kenny's singing. But he's on there twice. Like little things like that throughout, which I always think are interesting on albums. Oh, another one. When I was talking to Joe from Hidden in Plain View, the key, there's not a lot of piano, but there's a little bit of piano on Life and Dreaming, and that's all Andrew McMahon. Apparently, he told me they were working on this is after Something Corporate. He was working on the first Jack's Mannequin record, and he came to the studio and played some keys on Life and Dreaming. I can't even think of the songs off the top of my head. I'm trying to think what songs in there even have piano. But whichever ones do, he played all the piano on. So that's always interesting when you find that out. Like some of the behind the scenes where it's like you have these really cool musicians who came in and, only sang like a line or played like a bar of music or something. But I always think that's very interesting. But that is our list then. So, real quick, let's run back down at my top 5 favorite releases of Drive Thru Records. Movie Life Has a Gambling Problem at 5. Number 4, Life and Dreaming by Hidden in Plain View. Number 3, The Starting Line, Say It Like You Mean It. Number 2, my boys The Benjamins with Art of Disappointment. And my number 1 Drive Thru Records release of all damn time, and I mean all damn time, is the compilation You'll Never Eat Fast Food Again. You want to run down yours real quick again, dude?
Of course. My number 1 or my number 5 would be Welcome to the Family, the compilation. Buy it if you can, secondhand if you can get it. It's fucking exclusive as fuck, apparently. Motherfuckers by The Stellar Life. We will be including Hate Your Guts, a super exclusive track that actually no one's ever heard before, aside from Richard, The Starting Line, Richard, the Stellar Life. Yeah,
they're both TSLs. They're both TSLs, dude.
Yeah, they're both. And we've also been on this podcast for like 3 hours too, so I'm a little tired.
It's also
good. It's also midnight. So, motherfuckers, the Stellar Life, and we're gonna include "Hate Your Guts," which is a song that's never been released before. My number 3 is What It Is to Burn by Finch. Obviously, that's a hardcore pop punk album. Sticks and Stones is my number 2 by Newfound Glory. If you haven't heard that album, I genuinely think that's the album you should listen to first.
I'd agree with that.
Even though it's not my number 1, I think that's the album you should listen to all the way through if you want to listen to Drive Thru Records, because I just think that's the most polished. And like the thing between you and me, you like a little more rough sounding records. I like polished records, and I think that's the best album to start off on because it's polished and it's a punk record. And my number 1 is obviously Say It Like You Mean It, because it's a great pop punk album, and it got me through some stuff in college.
And and I think we can both safely agree that we think the best advice for anyone out there listening is to go get a long distance relationship, fuck it up, and relate to that album because it's a great album.
Or if you're in a long distance relationship, don't listen to Anthony. if you're in a long distance relationship, listen to this record. It might make you a little more emo. Definitely don't text your ex about how it's making you a little more emo.
Zach's life advice corner.
It will literally like you'll relate to it if you're in a long distance relationship, because I genuinely believe that's what the album's about.
Honestly, like, I really like that, dude, because I just didn't really think of it before, even though like everything's kind of there, but you're totally right. I see where that, where that kind of lays into there. So yeah, I mean, like you said too, we've been at this here for a while. This has been a lot of fun. We're going to start to close it out. Before we close it all out, though, and play you some Stellar Life real quick, man. I mean, there's so many drive-through bands that have, broken up, kind of gotten, a lot of them reunited since, on and off. But I mean, what's a drive-through band that you would like? You can even, if you got a couple, you can even say a few if you got them, but it's like a couple or one that you'd like to see reunite and like write music. Not, like I said, a lot of them reunite, play shows here and there. Who would you like to hear new music from in 2020 where you go, it's been all these years, they could probably still put something good out?
Well, I'm going to exclude Newfound Glory because Newfound Glory is putting out an album this summer.
Yeah, they're still together. So yeah, that one doesn't really count.
Okay, to be honest, I would love to hear a full pop punk album from the starting line.
I like that. So something kind of more like Say It Like You Mean It. Like they kind of go back to that.
I would love to hear like a full, like kind of like nodding to their past a little bit.
I'd like to hear that.
I think that would be really cool. And, I think it'd be really cool. I heard it's rumored that the Stellar Life is working on new music, but, that's just how, like, independent musicians are. Like, I don't know if that will happen. So that's just a side note. But I would love to hear new stuff from Finch as well.
That'd be a good one. I liked the record, their reunion record back in like 2014. What was it? Is it Anywhere But Here, I think's the name of it? Yeah, that's
correct.
It's a good record. It's much more mature, but actually though it is kind of a good combination of what it is to Burn and Say Hello to Sunshine. It's kind of like in the middle there, where I think it's kind of appeasing to both. Like if you're a fan of like both of those records, I feel like they were kind of in the middle there, and put out a really good one. It's tough, man. They get back together, break up, get back together, break up. So it's like, but you know what? The fact is they have gotten together enough where they have written stuff since. So, I mean, that one's not so crazy. You know what I mean? Like that one, we may not get anything this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got another Finch, record in our lifetimes. I don't think that's a band who's like never going to release something ever again.
Done. Yeah.
I could definitely see them doing that. Any others off the top of your head?
Ooh, that's a good one. To be honest, I would love to hear like at least an EP from something corporate. That would be cool.
Ooh, you know what? I like that you said EP because I think that's more doable. I don't think we'll ever get a full length from them, but yeah, I'm with you where it's like, how about 2 or 3 songs? You know what I mean? Like they can even do one of those things where I feel like a lot of bands do where it's like they put out a reunion EP like that and it's like, well, it's 1 or 2 songs that they had written years ago that never got recorded, and then maybe they write like 1 or 2 new songs. Not asking for a lot, just a couple new tracks. And I think an EP would be doable. I know they did that reunion in 2010, which I sadly missed, but they really haven't done anything since then. I know Andrew McMahon plays, he still plays some of those Something Corporate songs live. I interviewed Bobby Vaughn a few years ago from The Promise Hero, and he was a roadie actually on Andrew's first tour as Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. He was like I can't remember, he was like his production assistant or something on there, but he said that he would play Constantine some nights, and he would play different like Something Corporate songs. So I know he plays them live, but to get that band back together and play some shows would be amazing. And yeah, do like an EP. Because I like you said EP, because once again, it's like I don't think we're ever going to get a full length, but hey, give us a few songs. Throw us a fucking bone.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say, I mean, I like your list. Who was I just thinking? One just popped in my head too. Now I totally... One that's never going to happen, this is like a dream one, but I don't think will ever happen, is Midtown. I would love a new Midtown record. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'll be realistic. Hidden in Plain View, well, we know we're getting new music, so I'm stoked for that. Joe premiered that on the show, so I'm really excited for that, because they're a band who has done things on and off through the years, just like Finch, where I go, they could still write a good record. It's the same with Finch. Finch has put stuff out throughout the years where I go, they could still put out a good record. there's certain bands who haven't put out music in forever where you go, well, I'd like to hear new music, but is it going to be any good? Another one, I would really like to hear the Benjamins. I don't think they're another one where they would probably put out an EP. Like, they put that EP out a few years ago, and they don't hate each other. I mean, they play shows every now and then, and it's like, I think they all kind of have a soft spot for that band, even though, they just put out the one album. They still do things from time to time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we ever got new music from them. I don't think we'd ever get like a new record, but they're another like that fall in that EP category where it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if we got a new EP, and I'd be very stoked for that sometime. And another one, I'm being realistic. Like, Mother Mania is never going to put anything out. Caught Inside, Cousin Oliver. But you know what? Those bands also, I don't know that anything would sound good in 2020. Like, and it's not me being shitty. It's like those are ska bands from, 20-something, from like 25 years ago that I just don't think in 2020 are going to sound that good. Cousin Oliver's not going to write a follow up to 818 in 25 years later. Just not going to happen. And that's fine. You know what though? Probably the biggest one to me though, I would say Phoenix TX, because they put out a really good, the Creep EP that they put out in 2016 was really good. And that was new stuff. That wasn't, like I was saying, some bands put out like an EP and it's a couple songs they've had lying around for years and never got recorded and shit. Phoenix TX wrote new songs. They wrote new material, and I believe with the Lechuza lineup, and it was amazing. I mean, it was like they didn't miss a beat. It was like it was good, and it was mature too. It was Phoenix TX grown up, but not too grown up. Like, it wasn't like they were more mature than before, but it wasn't like boring or anything. They were still a great punk rock band. So that would probably be like my number one for that. But so those are a couple as far as that goes. So, kind of closing out here, man, we're going to play that Stellar Life song. And like I mentioned, you got your band Kickstart and whatnot. You kind of want to mention here, free reign, dude, kind of promote yourself here if you'd like. Where can people find you, dude? If they go, this Zach guy is a real swell dude, and I've enjoyed hearing his musical opinions, and they would like to say hello or something. Where can they find you, Zachary?
They can find me at Zachary Gorshevsky on Facebook.
You want to spell your last name real quick?
Yeah, I'll spell it at the end. They can find me as Zachary Gorshevsky on LinkedIn in case they want to make a business connection if they're that kind of person. Lastly, I do have a band, and we're making a comeback for the first time in like 4 years. I just found a new drummer. We just started working in the same marketing department. He's a really nice guy. And I think we're about to make some really good music because he's kind of pushing me into like a new direction that like I wouldn't really have gone in without him. And it's going to be really good. But I've been sitting on some music that he is going to record drums on. But I've been sitting on this music for like 4 or 5 years, maybe realistically probably like 4 years. But I plan on releasing a single this summer, June or July, called To the Contrary. It's about proving people wrong when they doubt you. And it's just like the feeling you get when you prove someone wrong and you're right. And you just kind of feel like on fire, but like against them. And I know that's kind of a weird way to describe it, but you just kind of feel like just good in a way that nothing else could, that you couldn't do for yourself. And I just feel like that's what To the Contrary is about. It's like proving people wrong. And I hope that single is going to be out this summer. And that's all Kickstarter's going to be doing right now. We're working on some other songs, and I hope that we can get them out. I want to do another single later this summer, but I hope to get out like at least an EP by like fall.
People want to listen, is the older Kickstart stuff available anywhere? They want to go listen to anything else too?
Yeah, so the stuff I recorded in high school with like completely different band members, but similar tone, I guess. Like more, I guess, just like earlier tone. You would look up Kickstart Subdue, SUBDUE, on Bandcamp. And just to like find me through it, it would be Zach Gorszewski, GORSZEWSKI, Gorszewski. And you can literally just find anything that I'm doing through that, whether it's like one-line drawings or pop punk songs or emo songs or like even a fucking country song. Who even knows?
Damn,
like,
dude, you're going country?
A little bit. A little bit. I think sometimes I surprise myself. So.
Fucking Punk Goes Country, dude. I don't think that's been made yet, has it? Has Punk Goes Country? That's not a compilation yet. That's.
I don't think so. I surprise myself sometimes, though.
I think maybe me and you should do it. We'll do a whole we'll do all Drive Thru Records songs. We'll make them all country like. That'll be fun.
I'm not against it.
I guess I wouldn't be against it unless it sounds really fucking bad. If it sounds like Americana or something. Not because now in my head I'm thinking of us doing. It's not even country. I'm thinking of us doing like. Fucking like Mumford and Sons versions of like Drive Thru Records songs, and that sounds terrible in my head.
In my head, it sounds fucking awesome.
There's something wrong with your head, dude, because that sounds like total shit to me. We're like playing banjos and stuff. We're just up there fucking banjos singing "You Were Everything I Wanted." Fucking
sounds good to me.
Okay, maybe. All right, maybe I'm the weirdo here. Maybe I don't have the. We're going to have to ask Richard. Richard and Stephanie, like we were just saying, really good at signing, at really sniffing out good talent. So we're going to have to ask them, is this the next moneymaker? Can we do Mumford and Sons versions of all these songs and destroy the beautiful legacy that you have created by butchering these songs with a fucking banjo? But yeah, so I mean, find Zach all those places. You can find me and the show at Power Chord Hour. We're YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify. We're on SoundCloud. We're everywhere online at Power Chord Hour. You'll find it all. Obviously, you're listening to the podcast wherever you're listening to it, but you can find it anywhere you get your pods. And we're also a radio show. Don't forget that. And we're Power Chord Hour on 107.9 WRFA every Friday night at 10 Eastern. You know, we do a lot of talking here, obviously, and that's a little more music heavy. You go there, I spin you songs, I tell you some music news, talk to you a little bit, but I definitely play more music. Here we talk more about music, and this has been a blast talking to Zach. So, man, before we get into the song, anything else you want to add?
Enjoy Hate Your Guts by The Solar Life.
All right, man, that is, I like that. So right now we got thanks to Zach, so if you like this, say thank you to him, and if you don't like it, say say fuck you to him. You got his handled now.
Send me a DM, be like, fuck you, I hate you, this song sucks, but actually you'll never say that because this song's fucking awesome.
I might say it just because I think it'd be funny. I think this song is awesome, but I might still DM you and tell you to go fuck yourself.
As you always do.
Yeah, as I always do. Oh, also, powerchordhour@gmail.com. Hit me up, because like I was saying, people really have hit me up on here about, like, when I talk about Drive Thru and a lot of those, like, old punk labels, they love it. Like, people love those labels just as much as we do, and I love to hear from people who are into that stuff. So hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. Let me know what you think about the episode. Let me know your top 5 favorite Drive Thru releases. You know, be a part of the show with us, and maybe I'll read them on our next episode, maybe talk about them next time. But that is going to be it. This has been a lot of fun, and actually probably going to be a 2-parter here. This has been a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun talking to Zach. Go check him out. Go check out Kickstart, and go check out all these rad drive-thru bands. Go support them all. And right now on the Power Chord Hour, we got the Stellar Life with Hate Your Guts.
Talking like she cares at all. It was dead from the start, then it fell apart. Little did I know that she'd make things clear. Yeah, I'm so last year. Little did I know that she's so cold, that she's so cold. I fucking hate your guts so much. I thought that you'd be the one. Hell no. Kanye West said it best. Baby, you're heartless. I fucking hate your your gut. Try to break her down. I started talking to her friends, post her nudes on the internet. Her heart just wouldn't break, and in the end she showed it all. She just loved to flaunt it all. This was for you, shall say. I fucking hate your guts so much. I thought that you'd be the one. Hell no. Kanye West said it best. Baby, you're heartless. I fucking hate your guts so much. I thought that you'd be the one. Hell no. Kanye West said it best. Baby, you're heartless. I fucking hate your guts. You spend your nights at parties where all the boys keep passing you around. I know you can't wait to be somewhere on your knees. No circumstances, no second chances. I promise you I'm I hate your laugh, I hate your crooked smile. The way you give it up for every single douchebag guy. I don't love you, I don't need you. He deserves you.